Hello everyone, it's Jin'taan here, and as always, it's time to dive into some of the latest happenings in EVE Online. This week has unfortunately been a little slower than previous ones, with only a few fights managing to break the 100 billion ISK mark, but thankfully CCP has stepped in at the last minute to make sure that we didn't escape the week without just a little bit of drama. Our headline stories today are a clash in Tenerifis between Winter Coalition and Legacy, murmurings of drama between Winter Coalition and their PanFam allies with a temporary reset, and a dread brawl between Rekking Crew and ProviBloc in Providence. So, let's start with a fight that I did touch on in my last update, which was the clash between Legacy and Winter Coalition in Tenerifis, and more specifically in the border system between that region and Detorid, which is 46DP TAC 0. This system has been the site of previous skirmishes between these two coalitions, as whilst the distance between 46DP and its counterpart in Detorid, 77S8, are only one gate jump away, they're far more than the 6 light-year maximum capital jump range. This means that whilst the system is under Legacy's capital umbrella, Winter Coalition can retreat across one gate and enter back under their own umbrella, providing a measure of safety when harassing Legacy. That gulf of jump range also means that holding citadels and other structures in this system helps with using blops and other tools that attack FI.RE and Legacy's economic situation, by giving a safe point with which to project across East Tenerifis and Central Omist. As such, FI.RE has made significant efforts to clear these citadels in the past in order to give themselves more safety to rat in their home region, chalking up multiple structure kills in a system over the course of July, and also had begun using super capitals to control grid whilst doing so. However, on the 10th of August, just after downtime, Winter Coalition moved in to seriously contest one of these timers, bringing a Harpy and Munin fleet to the field. Legacy and FI.RE responded with an Eagle and Munin fleet themselves, and a bloody subcapital versus subcapital fight ensued. Legacy ended up outnumbered in this fight, and increasingly so as it wore on, due to this fight taking place in the Chinese prime time. Consequently, they were also the ones taking the brunt of losses in the battle, trading roughly 2 Munins for every scimitar killed on the other side. Seeing this and wanting to turn the tide of the battle, FI.RE took this opportunity to commit a number of super carriers to the fight, piling a lucky 13 of them onto the contested grid. This only intensified the stream of reinforcements from Winterco and their allies, and soon another Munin fleet from Fraternity arrived, along with a Pandemic Legion Jackdaw fleet. Seeing the precarious state of the situation, and the risk of those committed supers being swallowed up, Legacy decided to drop a shield carrier fleet into system with the intent of covering the retreat of the FI.RE supercarriers. This maneuver ended up working, and all but one of the supercarriers were able to safely extract from the grid. However, that covering fleet remained itself trapped in the fight. All the while during this, the subcap war has steadily been going in favour of Winterco, who now have an overwhelming numbers advantage, and as such the Legacy hack fleets end up withdrawing from the field at this point. This leaves the carrier reinforcements brought in completely unsupported, and after bringing in a small dread bomb, Winterco was able to take them down. This brought the ISK totals of the battle to 34 billion lost by Winter, and 133 billion lost by Legacy. Legacy was technically able to pick up the objective here, as the Raytaru was pushed into its final timer. However, it doesn't look as if this was contested, as the Raytaru which started this fight remains alive and unreinforced currently. Still, given the strategic positioning of this system, I doubt it's the last time we'll hear about it during the war. Our next story is one that's a little more ephemeral, as all we know about it from the outside is a few leaked pings and various rumours, the latter of which is something that I try my best not to report on in these videos, unless someone is at least willing to put their name to them. Still, for backstory, Pandemic Horde and the rest of PanFam have had light blue standings with Fraternity and Winter Coalition for a few weeks, which has led to the pretty awesome name of PandaFam coming up to describe the block, which is something that I will be using from now on. This allows PanFam to use Winter Coalition's infrastructure such as Ansiblexes and Citadels, which is something that I've observed during my time getting background footage for this video, with the Jackdaw fleet you're seeing here being a Pandemic Legion one. These standings were temporarily revoked last Sunday, as was revealed in a ping that ended up on Reddit, which declared a temporary non-hostile reset. The exact cause of this reset isn't publicly known. However, given circumstance, it seems to likely have been a result of Fraternity joining in on the Raise the Tax, Get the Axe campaign that Snuffed Out, Volta and others have been taking part in, aiming to disrupt the quote-unquote Serenity Coalition of the Imperium, PanFam and Legacy, who enforce a trade monopoly on skill injectors and plex in perimeter, and then share the profits. This has been done by putting up their own citadels and attempting to defend them against the fleets from those groups which attempt to destroy them, and in the latest effort on this front, an Asbel was placed in a system I can't pronounce in Losec near Jitta. This was pushed into its final timer, and during that final timer fight, Fraternity was present to aid the defense with a Munin fleet. But whatever the cause was, in about 48 hours it was all over, and a ping announcing the end of the reset found its way to Reddit just as fast. As such, it seems as though there wasn't much lasting impact to this event. One of the most interesting things that I picked up on during this whole affair, however, is right back in that first ping, where Gobbins mentions that Norris has disappeared, and this matches up with rumours that I've heard previously from the Chinese community, and places Fraternity in an awkward position if it is true, as he was one of the key leaders and decision makers in the alliance. Whilst I am sure that Fraternity has a second tier of leadership to keep things running, not having one of your main members of leadership on hand to make calls during a war is a bad sign, and we'll have to see if this impacts Winter Coalition's long-term strategy as the war unfolds. Now, our final headline story brings us back to the ongoing war in Providence, with another fight taking place between Rekking Crew and ProviBloc, this time in the system of KBP. Now, KBP is an important economic lifeline for Providence, as it represents their main link with HiSec via Dittle, as the other HiSec link of YTAC MP to Carry is under Rekking Crew control. However, this fight wasn't over a citadel or jump bridge, or any other important strategic objective. Instead, it ended up taking place over a POCO, a player-owned customs office, because apparently it's 2012 again. Now, unfortunately for some reason, br.eve tools doesn't like this fight, so I can't show it in my normal breakdown format, but it seems as though the fight started and escalated almost immediately as the two made contact on grid. ProviBloc brought an RT Macario fleet, a Munin fleet, and a sizable capital fleet consisting mostly of dreadnoughts. Rekking Crew, on the other hand, brought a Rattlesnake fleet and a Legion fleet, as well as their own smaller capital fleet bolstered by 5 supercarriers that were dropped in at range. It seems as though ProviBloc focused both their capital and subcapital fleet on Rekking Crew's capital fleet, whilst Rekking Crew focused capitals on capitals and subcapitals on subcapitals. This led to Rekking Crew being able to even out their numbers disadvantage on the subcapital side, but allowed Provi to actually take control of the capital fight and force Rekking Crew to remove their supers from grid, eventually killing off almost the entirety of Rekking Crew's deployed capitals, which crucially included their fax, which is their main logistics support for their subcapitals. Being a little late to the party, this was the point at which myself and Spectre Fleet arrived, with me having planned to run a Golden Fleet long before this time was made. Still, I tried to dip in on the aftermath of this fight and sneak in some kills, but found myself quickly headshot and removed from the action, forcing me to stand the fleet down and leaving Providence to hold the field. Now, the final score of this fight does stand relatively close despite all that, with ProviBloc losing 106 billion and killing 119. But the most impressive feat here is really the numbers that Provi was able to field. I've not seen them bring 400 people to a fight in a very long time, and it will be interesting to see if this is a one-off occurrence, or if ProviBloc can more consistently flex its capital muscles within its eponymous region. And now we get to the aforementioned CCP-provided drama, with the Cyno changes that CCP Rise announced on the forums on Wednesday, which will limit regular Cynos to only Force Recons or Black Ops battleships. As with any change to the game, be it positive or negative, this has led to an excellent threadnought on the official EVE Online forums, which is full of insightful and positive reactions to the change. Now, I try and stay away from opinions whilst presenting news, and I will stick to that here, as I don't want to declare something this paradigm shifting good or bad until I see it in action. However, what I can do is talk about some of the impacts it will have people might not be immediately thinking about, as well as a few possible patterns of play that could occur with it. Now, the first thing I thought of when looking at this change is the problem that this presents of no longer being able to use a Cyno interceptor to bypass a gate camp by just bridging to the other side of it. However, that's not strictly true, as you can use something that I'm calling a Cyno chain through a cloaky nullified T3, which you can use to then bypass the camp and light a covert Cyno in the system. Force Recon can then bridge to this Cyno off of the Blops and light a regular Cyno, allowing ships to actually bridge in. As such, this might not be quite the issue that it appears on the surface, but it is going to be more difficult to bypass in-gate camps than ever before, especially as T3Cs can be caught by good decloakers. Another obvious area of the game that this will impact is hunting and using bubble traps such as pipe bombing, as you can no longer fit a Cyno to a ship with mass tackle or the ability to tackle a super, with interdictors and heavy interdictors being excluded. This means that your super tackle now needs to include 2 people, with a hick to tackle and a recon to light a Cyno to bring dreads or other reinforcements into the system, instead of just one ship. One last thing to mention, and something that I specifically wanted to signal boost in this video, is the impact that this has on Cyno vigils. In the past, Cynos have been used as something similar to lighting a candle in a vigil in order to remember other players who are no longer with us, with times like John Bellicose Day being an example of this practice. Whilst this isn't something to bend game design around, it's something that I do hope CCP keeps in mind and manages to give a nod to, with a candle-like firework or something similar, which would allow the cultural more to continue indefinitely. And finally, it comes time to mention that it's that time of the year again. No, not Christmas or Halloween or pumpkin spice latte season, but the CSM Summit, and the first one for CSM 14. This was initially hinted at in Dunk Dinkle's excellent series of updates which tell the week-to-week activities of your elected representatives, where he stated that, quote, much of the meeting was focused on coordinating sessions for the upcoming summit in Reykjavik, unquote. I was able to confirm with CCP Dopamine and other members of the CSM that this summit will be taking place on the first week of September, so now is a perfect time to contact the CSM if you wish to help them bring problems to CCP, which you can do via many avenues, with the easiest probably being the CSM Discord, which I'll leave a link to in the description below. As this is the first summit that I haven't attended in 3 years, it'll be interesting to take a look from the outside, and I hope to run through the minutes on the channel when they're released. Alright, well that wraps up this video, and I'd like to just take a moment to remind people about the channel's Discord, which you should totally join. There's a channel for tips and corrections if you have something you want to point me towards, and a cool general channel for random questions and chatting with other EVE nerds. I also should really put in a channel so that people can see when my fleets are coming up, but watch this space on that. Still, as you might have noticed, things have been a tad slow this week in terms of news, so for next week I'm going to work on something other than news to bring to the table in this kind of quote-unquote big video slot, as I don't want to get into the habit of making news videos even if there's no news to actually report on, as I think down that road inanity lies. But I want to keep making content nonetheless. So as always, if you have suggestions of what to cover, I'd be very interested in taking them on board. Currently my thinking is towards potentially doing a story that was missed in Andrew Goten's awesome book, The Empires of Eve, and cover the creation and initial rise to power of Pandemic Legion, as they're introduced at the point where they're already an influential group of mercenaries, and that misses a little bit of their backstory, which I think is very interesting. Anyway, until next time guys, have a great day and fly smart.